From Amanda Nunes scaring the heck out of Megan Anderson to everyone being terrified of Islam Makhachev, here are the fighters that everyone in the UFC is scared of. Starting off with Khamzat Chimaev. It's no surprise that Chimaev has won the Swedish national championship for wrestling, since he's the third-ranked welterweight in the UFC. Plus, he's been training since his early 20s. Even the head of the UFC thinks the Boers is an unbeatable force. He's been a big deal ever since he won his first 2 fights in the UFC in 10 days. COVID-19 and other health problems held him back for a little while, but nothing can stop him. At UFC 267, he beat Li Jingliang so badly in the first round that the referee had to step in. After the fight, he has been on fire and has challenged everyone from Colby Covington to Brock Lesnar in public. I'm not even going to talk about what he did to Kevin Holland. I mean, even Dana White called him one of the baddest dudes he's ever met. Makes sense though, especially since he's always ready to fight anyone and doesn't care about anything or anyone. He's one of the most dangerous fighters ever and has people absolutely terrified. He's so lethal that it is becoming harder and harder to find a matchup for the star, since everyone seems to be ducking him. So it's safe to say that fighters are super scared of him. But no one strikes fear in the hearts of men quite like Alex Pereira. The Brazilian MMA fighter used to be the UFC middleweight champion and is a terror in the middleweight class. Everyone knows that he's one of the best kickboxers of all time. The Brazilian has a great record with 33 wins, 21 of which were by knockout, and has only had 7 losses. He's a double threat in the ring, having participated in both kickboxing and mixed martial arts. He is the only person in Glory Kickboxing to have won both the middleweight and light heavyweight titles at the same time. He doesn't scare anyone as much as he used to scare Israel Adesanya. The fighter lost to the Brazilian 3 times. While we have to give it to him, he was pretty close to winning a few times, but could never really make it. That was until their rematch this year though, but still, the middleweight king has made everyone super scared. His amazing skills in the middleweight class have shocked everyone everywhere. Fighters come after his title and he knocks them back down without breaking much of a sweat. But when it comes to skill, no one does it like the legendary Amanda Nunes. It's safe to say that she's the female MMA GOAT, and she takes no prisoners. She absolutely smashes her way through her opponents. The Lioness is the UFC Women's Bantamweight Champion and the UFC Women's Featherweight Champion. She has a career record of 22 wins. The new UFC pound-for-pound rankings for women show that she's the best of the best. No wonder fighters are afraid of her. Just ask Megan Anderson. She's a fighter from Australia who fought for the UFC featherweight title at UFC 259 in Las Vegas. From the look on Anderson's face, it was clear that she was pretty nervous about facing the Lioness. She tried to put on a brave face, but when the fight started, it was clear that the Aussie wanted nothing more than to run away from Nunes. She got her wish too. The fight ended within 2 minutes, and the UFC kicked Anderson out. But you can't blame her. Amanda has a knockout record of 13. Yikes! Who wouldn't be scared? Well, anyone who has to go up against Alexander Volkanovski definitely would, that's for sure. ESPN has named him the best fighter in his weight class in the whole world. Since his first fight in the UFC in 2016, he only ever lost 1 fight, and that too against the king of the MMA, Islam Makhachev. That tarnished his perfect 12-0 record, but he didn't let that get him down. The Australian successfully protected his UFC featherweight title 4 times, making it 22 fights in a row that he hadn't lost. Volkanovski defended his featherweight title against Max Holloway at UFC 276. It was possibly his best performance to date. The featherweight king has held the rank of UFC's number 2 pound-for-pound best fighter for ages. He was just behind another UFC great, John Jones. He's still pretty scary though, and can take down anyone who dares cross his path. During During his time at the UFC, he's only been taken down a few times, and he has already shown that he can outstrike the best kickboxers in his division, like Jose Aldo. Also, he has shown that he is an unbeatable defender by outlasting and beating Brian Ortega, who's a dangerous threat in the division. The Great is now as unbeatable as it gets for a UFC fighter, so it makes sense why fighters are super terrified to get into the ring with him. Scary, right? Although this next fighter could give him a run for his money. Of course, I'm talking about Jon Jones. He sure has made a name for himself in the UFC, even more so since he beat Cyril Gane in the heavyweight class. He stole the submission and looked right at home in the division, which gave everyone more confidence in his abilities to rule the land of giants. It also made everyone fear him for his strength and determination. Jones is the best fighter in the ring, even though he's been in trouble with the law and failed substance tests, which caused him to lose multiple titles. Bones is the best of the best when it comes to making calculations and changes during a fight. This is why fighters hate getting into the octagon with him. His high ranking is helped by the fact that unlike Silva and Fedor, he didn't have his career peak cut short. The amazing fighter has won 5 of his 6 UFC fights by knockout. Think about it. He beat Alexander Gustafsson, Chael Sonnen, Mauricio Hua, and Brandon Vera. He even went up against Shogun Hua at UFC 128, and winning that match made him the youngest UFC champion in history. Many people were interested to see how Jones would do against Lyoto Machida, but they weren't surprised when he destroyed him during the match. The same can be said for Robert Whittaker. The skilled fighter is well-rounded and super likable. After winning the Ultimate Fighter in 2012, the Australian joined the top mixed martial arts organization in the world and fought at welterweight. Before he moved up to the middleweight division in 2014, he had a 3-2 record at 170 pounds. He has only lost weight twice in his entire career. He finally showed the entire MMA world who's boss at UFC 213. This was his first chance to win the UFC title, and he was up against Yoel Romero. The Reaper's attacks were so strong that he won the fight by a landslide, and he did it with a torn knee muscle. Romero's a pretty dangerous opponent, so the fact that the Reaper was able to beat him shows how tough he really is. He took a year-long break though, after losing to the last style bender Israel Adesanya at UFC 243. He's back now and better than ever. But there's one name that's scaring the toughest fighters out there, and it's none other than the unmatchable Islam Makhachev. Just look at him in the octagon and you'll be sure that he's one of the toughest opponents. In the main event of UFC 284, the UFC lightweight champion defended his title against the featherweight champion Alexander Volkanovski. He put up a fantastic show, and let's be real, he knows how to put the fear of God in his opponent's hearts. Just ask Charles Oliveira. Dubronx is so scared of him that he doesn't even want to get into the octagon with him. Oliveira lost his lightweight title to Islam. The Dagestani is a monster in the ring. He's won each of his last 12 UFC fights. With 11 consecutive wins, he now has the best record in the lightweight division. He's straight up one of the scariest people in the league. Well, that's all I have on the fighters that everyone is scared of in the UFC.
Our lives, so if you present an opportunity to get a sub, it's over. He'll go get it. There it is. He's got the arm.
And there's the tap.